And we're live with Walt Richer, Sharon Bennett, and right now Ray Villalobos. Morton is going to be joining us in just a minute. Welcome to nap time. This is the best time of the day, the time where you get your power nap back on and you get to not only take a little rest, but maybe learn something about technology. And today we have a pretty interesting topic. We are all always doing a lot of different things. And so I figured this would be a great time to talk about how to get things done. We all have different processes for how we do things. And I know that personally, I'm somebody who struggles with, I've gotten a lot of different to-do apps, and I've developed over time a lot of different to-do processes. And so, I sort of over time developed, as I've gotten busier, different ways of getting things done. So it'd be really interesting to know what everybody else is doing. And so we're starting up with Walt Richer.
So we're starting with Sharon.
Oh, we're starting with Sharon. I'm sorry. We're starting up with Sharon. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sharon, take it away and let us know how you actually get everything done.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. I hope everybody's having a good week. I use two critical apps to get things done, both for work and personally. The first one I would like to show you is Microsoft ToDo, which is fabulous. And I had it, and now you'll have to give me a second to find it. As you can tell, we're still trying to figure out the software as we go.
I know that Walt has a little bit of experience with Microsoft ToDo as well, right, Walt?
Yeah, I've been using it for years now, and I think it's an awesome application, and I can't wait to see how Sharon uses it.
Yeah, and this is probably one application that I haven't tried. I mean, I'm a to-do app junkie, and I know that being in the internet field that the first app you usually end up writing is a to-do app. And if you saw the little show, graphic, you can see there that I actually grabbed a piece of the to-do app, and I was just showing that this is usually my process for figuring out to-dos, that I try to remember to write the to-dos and then remember to check off the to-dos. And I usually just forget to check them off. So I see that you have the application running right now, Sharon. So here, that's what it looks like.
Yep.
So is that a web application, or is it, what is this?
This one's actually the actual app itself, the desktop app, but you can use the web app, whatever works for you, and it'll work on iOS and Android. So you can take your to-do list with you wherever you go, and you can share it. So if you're sharing something like, let's say, a grocery list, you can share that out with whoever's doing the groceries for the house right now, because we're not all supposed to be going to the grocery store. It's a fabulous little app. I absolutely love it. For example, I create my own custom to-do list, and I can go through and go, hey, look, I've got to prep for this. Not only do I know I have to prep for it, I can also see what items I have to do for that actual to-do to be done. So you can have more than one to-do. The other thing I really like about it is I can plan out my day. So if I would like to add more tasks, I can easily do that. It's simple, it's easy, or I don't have to spend a lot of time on a to-do app. But if you haven't looked at it, I would highly recommend that you do. The other app that I use for everything is OneNote. And I need to pull that up. Ray, have you got that up?
The OneNote application. Yeah, give me a second.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Hold on. You open. Oh, hold on. Here's, by the way, is Morton. Let me see. I have this. This is it right here.
I don't know. I can't see your screen.
It says demo. It says demo at the top.
That's us. That's me for now. Perfect. Yes. So this
Finish
is
my own learning and obtain the teacher trainer. That's what I see.
That's what it is. Thank you. Yeah, because I can't see what's up at the moment. So this is my other go-to app. This is OneNote. Again, it's a Microsoft product. It's not just for Windows. It's good for iOS, and I think there's an Android version of it as well. It's web or desktop based, whatever works for you. This is how I keep track of my life. I put everything into OneNote. I've obviously made some adjustments to my roadmap because not everybody wants to see my roadmap, and I don't want to share it all either. I don't want to give stuff away. But you'll notice here, not only do I have stuff not just for work, but I also have my personal stuff. And in this case, I have it planned out for the next approximately year. And we can see things that I did or did not accomplish last quarter or last half, what I'm planning on doing, and I can keep track of things that have been canceled. I also use it not only said for work, but for my personal. So let me pop into a program that I've been taking. Actually, I've completed it now. Whenever I take a certificate program or go back to school, I actually create a list of everything I have to take. And I include the prereqs, the order to take it, everything is listed there. I'll also link directly to that program, or I will link to other OneNotes. And then I create a OneNote for each of those courses. That way, it doesn't matter where I am. I can click a link and I'm exactly where I need to be. Within this OneNote for the actual course, I would go ahead and put all my assignments in here, and then everything's there. And the best thing with OneNote, for those of you who use PowerPoint and Decks, remember back in the day, there used to be a SharePoint library or something for Decks and you could search. I mean, it's gone. We don't have that anymore. If you put all your PowerPoint Decks into a OneNote, all those decks are now searchable. It's a great little tip. And those are my two go-to productivity apps. Walt, I know that you like ToDo as well. How do you use it?
Well, I use it very similar to the way that you mentioned there. It's how I keep I basically use it as a gathering place for all of the ideas that I want to work on. But first, let me talk about, I got a tip years ago from Jeremy Lickness, who I worked with at Winelect. And he wrote a blog post about this. He calls it the power of three. And that really changed the way I thought about it. Basically, every day I ask myself, what are the three most important things I can accomplish today? And that becomes my guiding star for the day. What can I do to ensure that those three things get done? And then the ToDo app becomes my capture center, where I store my ideas and possible tasks. And then when I choose my three ideas, I can look through my list. If I'm not sure what I want to do for the day, I can look through that list, find them, and then promote those to the top of my daily list. And then, of course, I use other tools like OneNote to help me realize those goals, just like you do. Now, this sounds lofty and well-planned, but really, there's many days when I'm not as organized as I sound. Things happen. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is the focus. I don't know, I'm having a hard time focusing a lot in the last few weeks because of the situation with the pandemic. But a technique that I've used off and on for years is the Pomodoro technique. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I'm not really very familiar with how it works. Maybe you can go over it.
Sure. The idea is that you want to focus on something, and if you're like most of us, you get distracted. It's like you start working on something and you go, oh, well, you think about something while you're in the middle of a task and you switch to the other task. But the Pomodoro idea is that you specify 25 minutes of your time to focus on one specific thing. And you set a timer, and until that timer goes off, you can't focus on anything else. And the point is, the idea here is that you know you're focusing. So like you go, oh, I'm going to go check the browser. No, I'm not going to do that. I've got 15 minutes left. I'll look at that as soon as my Pomodoro timer goes off. So it really helps focus for a short period of time. I also use it for things like remembering to get up and walk around. I use a standing desk, so I switch when my 25 minutes is up. Maybe I'll stand up for the next 25 minutes. But here's the thing I wanted to show is this timer. A lot of Pomodoro techniques use the idea of a timer, and this timer cube is great because if you can see the different times here from 5, 10, 20, and 25. And the way this works is I just tilt it up, right? Tilt it the right way. So the 25 is on the top. You see it beep, the light comes on, and that sets the timer for 25 minutes. And then when it goes off, I just flip it back to the blank side, and the timer is off. If I need to do a 5-minute task, like the idea of Pomodoro is you do a 5-minute break and then you do another 25 minutes. So you see here, I've got the 5-minute on the side. So I just flip that up, and now I've got a 5-minute timer. And they make a number of these timers, about 12 different items with different times. There's ones for like 1 minute, 3 minutes for teaching your kids how to brush their teeth and things like that. Great physical device, much better than any of the other timers I've used in the past.
Wow, that's really cool. I like the idea of having something physical that, sometimes just even getting, your software to run, becomes kind of a pain. So just having something that you could just go flip. As a matter of fact, I pulled one of my physical clocks here so that I would know what time it is. So sometimes just having something tangible makes
Exactly.
a huge difference. You don't have to get it up and running,
This is so much easier just when I sit down to do my next sprint, basically. I just flip it over and I don't have to think about it.
That's super.
And then, so that's what the two main items I wanted to talk about. I see Morton's joined us. What is your primary to-do items you like to work with?
It is a pen.
I knew it. You're like the pen person.
A book.
I like it.
So
very old school.
So I don't know if I can make my camera adjust to this. Hold on. I have some camera settings there I can play around with. Let's see if I can adjust it down so you can actually see what's going on. If I pull the gain down.
There you go. That works. Wow. Check it out.
This is something I'm currently trying out. It's basically at the start of every week. So on Monday, I set aside about half an hour to plan the week. So these are the 7 days of the week. The Saturday, Sundays just mushed into one. This is an earlier week, so now I actually put a line in between so that I have Saturday and Sunday separate. And then I block out the times where I actually have meetings that are things that are going on. Then I have two lists. This is the to-do list. These are things that need to get done. And then this is the tickler list, which is things that, like, if I have time, I want to do something. And then over here on the right-hand side, I have things that I need to get done at a certain volume over the week. So I have meditation and workouts. And then I just block them out as I do them to keep myself honest. The idea being, if I write everything down and I have something that is not checked out by the end of the week, I carry it over into the next week. Now I use notebooks for everything. So if you had my notebook and you leaf through it, you'd notice that I have like a week. Let's see if I can find an example of it here. So I have a week, and then directly after, there's a bunch of notes for some random stuff I've been doing that week, and then comes the next week. And then there's a bunch of notes from random things I was doing that week, and then comes the next week. And the idea is, like, this is, there's no fancy thing. There's no book written about this, or there's no app for this. It's basically just the way my brain works. People often will make a calendar like this. Like my sister-in-law makes a calendar like this for the year. And then she has a book where she has the whole year, page by page by page by page. But for me, that doesn't work because I need everything in chronological order. And it's easier for me to work on something and then just have the week and then just write down, use however many pages I need, and then jump to the next page for the next week and then just do the same. Because then I can go back in time and look at what I was working on at a specific time. The other thing I have is this really fancy thing here. This is shockingly expensive.
Oh my gosh.
It's just a holder for cue cards. It was expensive because I bought it at, what is it called? Miniso, like, no, it's the other one. It's like a Japanese fancy organization store. But it contains cue cards, and there are 3 rows. So there are things that I need to get done, things that I might get done, and just bad ideas that I need to write down. And the idea is, anytime I have something in my head, like you've all hung out with me, so this happens a lot. I'll have like some grand idea, and then I totally go like, this needs to be done. And I will list out the million things that need to be done to make that happen. And if you lived in my house, you know I get these enormous ideas about every 10 minutes. And they take up a lot of mental space for me. So my former boss, who then moved on to a different team, Stephanie Evans, she got so frustrated with me doing this that she said, you need some method for handling all your ideas. And then she gave me a bunch of books, and I kind of took the stuff out of, Getting Things Done, that book, and then I made it into something that actually worked for me. So what I do is, anytime I have an idea of anything, I immediately write it down, and it ends up on a cue card. And then depending on what the idea is, sometimes it'll be, let's see if I can find a good example. Yeah, sometimes it'll be like something fairly involved. So I'll write down what the thing is, and then every single piece I can think of that is related to that thing, and then I put it in the box. And then I'll sometimes draw things. So here's a user interface that I drew for something, right? And by doing that exercise, by writing it all down and putting it in a card, I don't have to think about it because it's been hashed out and it's been written down, and I can go and review it later. The reality is, in most cases, I write something down, it goes in the box, I never look at it again, which is fine because that means that it wasn't something I should be doing anyway. But then on the other end of it, if I then have time, I can go back into the box and look at these cards to see like what are there something I can be working on, and then I can do a review on a monthly basis to see like, is this actually something worth pursuing, or should I just chuck the card? So in my bag, in my desk, everywhere I go, I have this huge stack of just blank cue cards that I write things down on. I think there's one in my jacket too, where anytime I have some idea, I just write it down on a cue card because then it's out of my head, and then I'll review it later. So extremely disorganized, basically.
It's interesting. What's interesting for me is it a lot of what you're saying seems to mesh with what I do, but I'm using a software version of an app that does similar things.
Yeah, I just like, there's something about the physicality of writing that makes me think carefully about things. Like if I'm on an app, there's a billion other things happening. I mean, I use a note-taking app and stuff like that sometimes if I don't have anything else with me, but the physicality of writing changes something in my brain when I'm working, and it makes me think about it differently. So, and I really like, I mean, if you look at my book, it's full of all sorts of random things. Like this is a outline for a conference talk, right? And then there's a big mind map for something somewhere in here. So I use here as a mind map for some sort of idea, right? So I use drawing as a way of hashing pretty much everything out that I ever do. And it's something I've been doing since I was in high school. So I just can't do the things that I want to do on a digital interface. I would have to have something where I could draw and then leaf through it, which doesn't work. So books are just better.
Yes, I have a question, Morten, because I think that my problem is that maybe in a similar way, what happens to me is I tend to get overwhelmed, and I find that having the searchability of a digital app is really convenient for me. So how do you deal with, say, you get up in the day and you go over all the lists, or you just check your little sort of cube there for the things that you have to do? How does that work for sort of a physical system?
Well, I have my calendar, right? So I know what is going to happen that day. And then I have the list of things in my calendar that shows me these are the things I need to get done this week. And if there is something that has to be done at a certain time, it goes in the calendar. So I'll actually put the task in the calendar and block out the necessary time for it. So if I have I need to write a table of contents for my next course, and I know when it's due, I'll put it in my calendar a couple of days before and block out a solid 2 hours just to do that. And
so
then
like a physical calendar also with cute little pictures of...
it's the calendar in here. And then I'll translate that over into my digital calendar if I need to block out time so other people don't touch it. But this is the master. So the hard copy book is my master. If you want to mess up my life completely, you just steal that book.
That's what I was going to ask. I've never left. I went to Carpinteria and I completely just left my laptop at home. So I got to the airport and I was like, I guess I'm going without my laptop. So I had to come back.
I take a picture.
Very good. So you do use technology.
Yeah, but that's like a backup, right? That's just so that I have a backup in case something goes wrong.
He's not saying he doesn't like technology. He just knows what works for him. And what I'm hearing you say is you figured out what really works for you. And for your case, it's physically writing.
Yeah, and I mean, it applies to everything I do. So anytime I do anything of meaning, I always do it in paper form. So I have paper all over the place. You'll see I have a giant whiteboard in my office where I design all my websites, I draw out all my courses. Everything is on paper first or in handwriting because that's just how my brain works. So
I think I wish I would have shown my face whenever you first pulled that up, and it would have been like that. Then,
Ray,
makes perfect sense because then I do know you. And I do that.
So Ray, have you talked about what you do yet? I'm sure you have 800 apps tied together with a cron job.
That's right. Yeah, so I think my problem is perhaps the opposite of Morten's, that I tend to rely on technology, So much so that years ago, I got rid of all my physical books except for like maybe a couple. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just not going to use books anymore. So I just got rid of everything except for I kept like 2 books, 2 physical books. So one day I should share them with you. They're not here. They're in my office. So it's sort of like if you've ever seen what is that? The Time Machine. H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. He goes back into the past and he picks up like 2 books, and you're wondering which books he picked. So anyways, so I do use a lot of technology conversely to what Morten does. And my problem is that I try all these different to-do apps and they don't always work. So over time, I have figured that I have like different levels of, being able to get things done. First, it's kind of the stuff that I can keep in my head. And there's little apps that I use. I have an iPhone, so the reminders app, sometimes it's useful. It's what I do if I need to go to the grocery store. I just fill it out there. But eventually I get overwhelmed with the amount of tasks that I need to do. And so in that case, what I tend to go for is something that is a Kanban application. So something that uses a Kanban-like board. And the classic one that people know about is Trello. It's like a free online application that gives you a Kanban board. This comes from the agile techniques that tell you that, if you, instead of having a to-do list, tends to be a one-dimensional sort of list of things that you need to get done. But Trello and other Kanban-like applications give you a separate dimension. So it becomes, sort of a 2-dimensional to-do list where you can have columns in addition to just a single sort of stream of content. So I really love it because whenever I get overwhelmed with all the things that I have to do, I go to some sort of app like that. So the one that I've been using lately is called Notion. And it combines a lot of different things, but it gives you not just the to-do versions, but it also gives you these 2-dimensional versions of to-dos, and you can write things in Markdown. And it has a lot of other features. So for example, it has an Excel-like feature that you see right here. So in addition to just being able to create to-dos, you have all these different options. So this is kind of my go-to whenever I have to get things done. And depending on what I'm doing, oftentimes you'll see me that on specific projects, if I'm doing a web project, GitHub has this little projects tab on every project. And this is the one for the Bootstrap frameworks. You can see sort of a well-developed one. I tend to use this in my immediate projects that I'm doing on GitHub to sort of track the different tasks. And this is sort of how a sort of 2-dimensional to-do application works. You have these different columns, and when you get something done, you move it from one column to the other. The advantage of doing it in something like GitHub is that it does allow you to do things like assign people to them. You can obviously put dates on them. I tend not to use that much, but for me, sort of the 2-dimensional nature of the application is what becomes like super powerful to me. So does any of you guys use any sort of like Kanban-like structure?
I started using Planner a year or two ago when it was incorporated in, I think we were using it in Teams. Here at work, we use Teams a lot, and that was one tool. And it's one of those tools, I use it for a while and then I don't use it, which kind of brings up the question I had for you, Ray, is like you have multiple apps. Do you find yourself sometimes where you've got to-dos, I'll use air quotes there, in multiple apps, like you use GitHub, you've got things in GitHub, you've got things in your app you just showed, and we also are monitoring email. Do you find yourself, how do we organize ourselves when you got multiple streams coming in?
Yeah, so
multiple locations.
I think of like the Kanban structure more as a process for getting projects done as opposed to how I do everything. So my Kanban boards are very project based. So I use Notion if I want to organize, say if I'm working on a course and I'm trying to list out what I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to be recording something, then I'll create a board for that. So I very much use them strategically to work myself through specific projects as opposed to trying to organize my entire life. And it's especially helpful when I get overwhelmed with, I got too many things in my head. I need to organize them, and you could do this. We used to know a guy named Doug Winnie, and he used this specific method. And if you watch like Silicon Valley, the show, which is a fantastic show, you will see that you can actually do this physically, and you use it with, little, what do you call it? Little yellow notepads, little yellow pads, and you essentially make columns. And Doug, our friend, was actually doing this to organize his constructor. He was having some construction done in his house. So he actually had a little Kanban board structure to see where his different sort of to-dos for that project was done. So I think, like, for me, Kanban is a fantastic technique to use for projects, and they become self-isolated for that specific project. I think that's probably, for me, the to-do list every day. I think it can be useful for very limited things. So sometimes I'll have like an application that just reminds me to do certain things. More of a reminder type app, like the Reminder. And there are some other ones that I use for reminding myself to do things. But then project management, I always go towards a Kanban-based approach, because it just lets me dump a bunch of tasks that are focused around that specific, item, and I can attack them. And I know that I can almost dump it all out of my head and not worry about where that project is, and I can come back very quickly into that board and then take a look at, okay, I know what's going on immediately with the project, and I can reassign things, or ask people about tasks and columns.
So I've been following this stream on LinkedIn, and we're getting I asked for some tool suggestions. We're getting a great list. One that I thought was interesting, it was from Anissa. She said that one of her productivity tools is Google Photos. And so I asked, what does she use it for? And she uses it for video, graphic, social media content organization.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. I do that too.
You do? Okay.
How do you use it, Morten? Because I don't really think of it as it's just an organization tool for, I guess, a task, right?
I just use it to take pictures of anything that's relevant, and then I can sort it later.
And you can also search.
When I see something in the world. Yeah, because Google Photos is like the CIA has funded them, so they have a very advanced AI. So when you go in and you say like, I think I saw a fence, and then you can go look fence, or look green, or look whatever, and you can kind of just, the AI figures out what's in the photos usually. Yeah. Or if you know where physically you were, it can just say, give me all the photos that were taken in this particular location, and then it gives back to you.
That's a good tip. Like, I know that whenever I go like get my eyes checked and I get a new prescription, or if one of my kids gets a new prescription, then I make sure that I use like the Photos app on my phone, take a photo, and then I tag it. And then I can always go back and look it up, because otherwise you take so many photos that you really forget over time what you've done.
We do that when we renovate. So we bought an older house and we've been renovating. And every time we go out to the Home Depot or wherever we are, we're taking pictures of what we want to put in the house, the cost of it, so we can then price compare. And it just makes it so much easier. Tag those, and then I send those right to the contractor.
Nice.
Yeah, super cool. So yeah,
I think
go ahead.
Just one thing. I think it's actually worth revisiting this conversation in a future episode, but talk about how we do task management in teams. Because what we've discovered here is that every single individual has a completely different way of doing things, which works fine for individuals. And that's why there are a million tools available. But what do you do when you have like 4 people that have to do a podcast or a not podcast together and have tasks that need to be performed? And how do you pick the right tools for that and get people to do the work?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe perhaps that could be like, how do we actually organize the podcast? And we're kind of going through that process, and we definitely use a number of different things. But I imagine a few months from now, it'll all be kind of more locked in, and we'll have it all figured out. Super. So I do want to mention that
you all schedules.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I do want to mention that as the show is closing up, that we are going to be moving the nap time a little bit later, just an hour later. So that'll be 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and noon Pacific in the future, just to make sure it doesn't collide with some of the other meetings. So don't worry, you can take your nap a little bit later in the day, and we'll be back in a week talking about some other very cool, exciting topic. We've got a lot of ideas, but we haven't nailed one down. So good seeing everybody, and we'll see you guys again next week.
Bye.